know the news. See you tomorrow.
The Fox Report with Shepard Smith. A presentation of Fox News Channel, the network America trusts, period.
The O'Reilly factor is on. Tonight, another shocker in the Scott Peterson case. The judge postpones the penalty phase for another week as he rules against some desperate motions from the defense. Is John Kerry shooting the messenger? The senator tells donors Fox News was out to get him. A fair and balanced report coming up, and the hammer drops on those rowdy NBA stars who charged into the stands and let loose on some fans. Now lawsuits are flying. Caution, you're about to enter a no spin zone. I'm John Kasich in for Bill O'Reilly. The factor begins right now. Hi, I'm John Kasich in for Bill O'Reilly. Thanks for watching us tonight. One of the worst brawls in U.S. sports history is turning into one of the most expensive. The NBA comes down hard on the players who got into it with the fans, but some folks think the punishment doesn't fit the crime. John Kerry slams Fox News in a letter to his supporters. And just back from inside the war zone, a combat reporter gives us an eyewitness account of what went down in Fallujah. Those stories in the next hour, but first, our top story tonight. The jury that's supposed to decide if Scott Peterson should live or die is getting this Thanksgiving week off. They were supposed to start the sentencing phase today, but a judge has postponed it for a week. He also shot down 2 defense motions. Mark Garagos wanted him to change the venue and seat a new jury for this phase of the case. Joining us now is Ann Bremner, a former prosecutor, and from Redwood City, Ginny Walia, a defense attorney. Ann, all right, so the judge today gives him a week to sort of recuperate again, but He says no change in the jury, no change of venue. Pretty tough judge, huh? What do you read into this?
Yeah, no surprise, but Judge DeLuca is a tough judge. He's a good judge. And I think a lot of people predicted this, because to get a change of venue, you've got to show statistically that there's some prejudice out there in the jury, pool. This jury's been sequestered and has heard a long case. Getting a new jury, aside from a change of venue, virtually impossible. So he did the right thing. You know,
the interesting thing, Ann, is he said we could move it anywhere. If we don't move it on Mars, everybody in the world knows about this case.
Right.
Jenny, what is the strongest case that the defense can make in terms of being able to argue for something less than this death penalty?
Well, they're going to have to show that the mitigating factors in this case outweigh the aggravating factor. Aggravating factors are factors that make the crime worse. For example, torturing the witness, or for example, the Rochas in this case will say that they suffered over not knowing where Lacey was. And mitigating factors are things that make the crime less heinous or not so atrocious. The lack of any criminal record in this case will help Scott Peterson. But on the other hand, the defense counsel in this case has himself said, my client is a liar of 14 karat blank blank, so it's going to be hard for them to put on a lot of mitigation in this case, but I believe they will focus on who Scott Peterson was before this prosecution and these allegations became a part of his life.
Try to paint him as sort of a guy next door somehow. It's going to be very difficult to do. But Ann, well, first of all, how about the prosecution? What's the best argument they can make? What are they going to do? What are their tactics?
That he spoke the loudest when he spoke no words at all. He said nothing at all. He's a liar, he's a cheat, he's an infidel. He's somebody that's probably beyond redemption. Victim impact. What has this done to the people that survive? And think about this. Connor never lived, never walked, never had a first Christmas, never fell in love, never had a family.
Ginny, do you think that we will see Scott Peterson's parents on the stand?
Oh, certainly. I believe that Scott Peterson's mother, Jackie Peterson, will take the stand and she will beg for mercy for her son's life. It's the case in every death penalty case. Her testimony will be at the heart of the defense case, a mother's plea for her son's life to be spared. But I want to comment on the aggravating factors. I don't think a liar and a cheat in this instance make them aggravating factors. Although she disappeared and she died, Scott's done this before, so just because it's happening right here, it should not count as aggravating factors.
Jenny, don't you think their strongest argument is a lot of it is circumstantial evidence, and that no one should be put to death on the basis of circumstantial evidence? Lock him up for the rest of his life, but don't execute him. Aren't we going to hear something along those lines?
Sure, we're going to hear that. We're going to talk about the lingering, they are going to talk about the lingering doubts theory. The problem with that theory is you're questioning the jury's verdict that made that verdict. You're sort of telling them your verdict could have been an error. It has known to backfire. That's the reason Garagos was seeking a new panel, and I think that it should have been granted. Yeah, Not right now, but earlier on.
You know, my sense is that, you know, he's been too worried about things backfiring. I was just talking to one of our experts here who said when the prosecution finished the case, he should have said the defense rests.
Absolutely.
But he didn't do that. Now, look, and we know that there's going to be an appeal. What is the chance of an appeal being successful?
Well, you know, the main grounds for appeal come from what happened during deliberation.
Right.
This defense was full of sound and fury and signified very little, overpromising. So there wasn't much in the defense, and the prosecution was slow and steady, measure for measure, not a lot to appeal.
Right.
So I think with the foreman being dismissed, there's an issue there at the record
But you don't think it will be successfully appealed? Okay, well then that brings up the issue of, do you put Scott Peterson on the stand to plead for his own life?
Unless he gets up and says something, I think for the prosecution, just to quote Shakespeare one more time, all's well that ends well for their case. They've been very measured. I think it's his only chance. His parents have already said they're proud of their son, and they've pled for his life in a way in the case. That was rejected, really. Form of acceptance. But he has to say something. What if he just says, you know, it was an accident. It was a heat of passion moment. You know, I've denied, but now I'm coming clean, and I don't want to die.
Do we read anything into the fact that he was convicted of first degree on Lacey, but second degree on Connor? Did that show perhaps some division within the jury, some compromise?
I think it was a logical verdict because he didn't premeditate the death of his own son. He premeditated the death of his wife. That makes sense. You know, that jury came out with such conviction when they were polled. Is this your verdict? Yes. They came in today and they wouldn't look at him. They will not look at him. They didn't even look to see, is this someone we should save? That should cause the defense grave concern.
Jenny, with Mark Garagos, you know, I was just absolutely stunned that when the verdict came in, he was in a trial in Los Angeles. Is there any sense that he was did not give this case his full attention, and that in this penalty phase, maybe they ought to use somebody else?
Well, it's kind of a dangerous plan to change the main defense attorney in this case. I think just because he wasn't there to take the verdict doesn't mean that he didn't give it his best effort. Yeah. And he probably didn't expect the verdict on that day. How could a jury, after 7 hours of deliberation, convict a man of first-degree and second-degree murder?
All right, ladies, we're going to have to leave it there. We're obviously going to be following this. Thank goodness we got a break over Thanksgiving. Thank you for being with us. Up next, John Kerry takes a swipe at Fox.